artificial intelligence, innovation, and digital transformation. Welcome to Safety 4.0 Live with Lucas Dominguez, the podcast for EHS leaders in the digital age. Today, we welcome Ben Fulford, AI Innovation Lead at BMT.
So anyway, welcome to Safety 4.0 Live. This is the podcast where we connect safety with technology in the digital age. My name is Lucas, I'm your host. And today I have a special guest with me. His name is Ben Fulford. He is an aerospace engineer with a master's degree in safety critical systems. And he's here today to talk about AI, innovation, and risk management. And we're going to try to answer one fundamental question, which is, can AI deliver a credible risk study, a HAZOP, a HAZOP, or what are the boundaries that we cannot cross? So, Ben, good afternoon. Thanks for being with me today. And please introduce yourself and thanks for your time.
Hi, Lucas. Ben Fulford, as you said. I'm a functional safety engineer here at BMT. I've been working for well over 15 years, nearly 20 years in this industry, across a range of domains, but mostly in UK defence. And since I've been at BMT, I've been leading a lot of AI adoption, especially across the safety and environmental capability here, as well as trying to develop look into new ways that we can use AI and trying to understand, where is the best times to use it and what's the best way to use it as well.
Fantastic. And again, thanks for your time today, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So the only reason why we do this podcast live is to interact with you. So if you can please start by dropping, questions in the chat, things that you want me and Ben to talk about, or you can pretty much say where from you're joining us today. That would be really, really good. So I forgot to introduce me properly, Ben. So I'm the founder of the Safety 4.0 Academy, which is the world's first IOSH-approved and CPD-accredited program, training and preparing EHS leaders worldwide to lead and thrive in the digital age. I'll share more details about that really, really soon. So, Ben, we're here to talk about the role of AI in risk management, right? Especially on HAZOPs and safety cases and that kind of safety critical studies. But before even talking about AI and technology, can we first frame and explain to the audience, in case they are not aware, what are those studies that are important for safety work?
So with it, really important when we're doing system safety is to try and understand the different ways that a system can fail. Once you identify as many different ways that you can fail, then you can start to introduce mitigations to control those failures. We use techniques like HAZOP, or there's many different hazard identification techniques that we can use to try and identify all those different failures. But they can be quite laborious. They take quite a lot of effort. They can take a lot of people, and they just take a long time to do. And often those studies can cost hundreds of thousands of pounds just to do them in isolation.
Sure.
And often that won't cover the full range of different ways that system can fail. So you need to often use a combination of these different types of studies to try and get a full and accurate picture of that system and how it performs, and most importantly for us is how it fails. So there are some newer, more advanced techniques, that those systems engineering type techniques that are then looking at for systems that are getting more complicated and the way that they interact with each other. So we did we looked at, can we use AI to help really speed up a lot of that work, because it is very mandrolic. So for anyone that isn't aware of what a HAZOP is, you break down your system into its individual components, and then you look at all the different properties that each of those components can have, such as, maybe if it was a water system, to be pressure or temperature or flow rate. And then for a HAZOP, you'll apply those guide words, the HAZOP guide words. That might be no flow, or it is high pressure, low pressure, or it happens early or it happens late. And there are a lot of different guide words you can apply to these different system components, and there's a huge different combination of them. And that takes a long time to just create that, to just go through and try and understand what are those, apply those guide words, what would the deviation from the normal behavior be? And then that just to create that content is a huge thing. And then you need to go to a forum where you have the different expertise to understand which one of those are regular, which one of those are actually possible, and which are just a combination of those different words. And I was interesting. I tried to explain to some non-technical friends how we do this, and I kind of realized that actually what it is, it's a bit like a language game that we're playing when we're applying these different guide words, and you're trying to think about how that system can deviate from its normal behavior. And it's a structured game that we're playing with language. And one of the best tools that we've got for playing this game are a large language model, and they're really, really good at doing that, being able to play to adapt those and think about how that can happen. But it also really, when you do look at it, really shows the limitations of the language models as well. So it's that combination of really the absolute strength of how amazing the language models are, but also where those limitations are around it as well. So it was a really interesting study and a really interesting thought experiment that we looked into.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You mentioned about the potentials and also how it can help in terms of speed, quality, but there are also risks and limitations that we need to talk about. So the way we got connected on LinkedIn, it was when I saw one of your posts about your experiment, and you pretty much said that you could do 80% of the work in 20% of the time, right, using AI. So tell me a little bit more about your experiments, the type of LLMs that you used, and your outcome. So did it work for you? Where did it fall short, for example?
Okay. Yes, it's a good point. So when we took a system that we use a lot, and actually we use this system as part of our interviews. So when I interviewed to join BMT, we had to do an analysis of it. And so it's a system that we understand very well because it's been reviewed by pretty much all the experts that we have at our company. But so we thought it was a really good place to start, because it's a water treatment, a portable water treatment system. So it's used by the military, that you can drop it anywhere in the world and you can get clean, potable water from any sort of water source. So it's got variations, lots of different components involved in that. And so we went around and trying to analyze that system. And the output that we got from it, and so the safety manager, the person that is probably the person that understands that system, we used him as an independent reviewer. So we analyzed, and we actually focused on one part of the system for it, and we got the output from it. And my colleague Luke looked at it, and he said the output was like a junior engineer had done this assessment. And so whilst it made mistakes, and it assumed things, but they were assumptions that were not sort of dissimilar to someone that was new and was junior or just less familiar with the system, and that they'd made those mistakes. And so that's where we got this figure of 80% of the effort and 20% of the time, because actually it did so much of it so well, and yes, it had made a few mistakes here and there, but it was sped up so much of that process. So it was a really interesting case study that we did on that, and I think it really showed the value that it is. And I think you said 5 years ago to anyone, if I could make you do 80% of this effort and 20% of the time, we'd all bite our arms off. But I think there is still concern within the safety community, and I agree with that concern, as well as we're trying to automate so much of it, and that then when it does make mistakes, those mistakes start to slip through the gaps. But for me, 80% is that kind of sweet spot of it's done so much of the effort, but that means 1/5 of it is wrong. And so that makes it quite easy to spot the fifth of it. I actually think the bigger worry is when it starts to get 95, 99% correct. And those little mistakes then become much harder to spot because you start to rely on the system. So yeah, but I think it's such an incredibly useful and powerful thing to have. On your other questions of the weakness of the study, one thing we really found that it struggled with was understanding the system in the first place. So the way we tried to design the prompts and the prompt engineering that we used was that could fit into a normal workflow, the way that we do our work right now, with very minimal change to that. So you take a system design document and you feed it into the LLM and you try to ask it to extract what are those different elements of it, and then what are the different components of the system. And it did really struggle with that a lot. And it made me kind of think that, that's the next, and I'm literally working on the next version of that study now, is how we can improve that part of the system, is being able to understand it. So we tried to make it so it could just fit into our normal workflow, so we didn't have to do anything. You could literally feed in system design documents. So the next question is, do we need to change the way that we build our system design documents, or do we need to change the way we work with the LLM to understand that? And I think I've got some ideas on both of those.
Okay, I'm very keen to hear about your ideas. But let's go back a little bit. You mentioned that the results looked like it was done by someone junior, right? But when you're talking about HAZOP studies, it's a safety critical document, and we cannot, just accept such, let's say, junior inputs as a final result. We need experience. We need to take into account people that understands the facilities, the engineering, the drawings, procedures, and everything else. So I guess what you're saying is that AI performed as you expected, but it's still required to have a human in the loop. Absolutely important not to take our expertise out of the game. Is that right?
Oh, 100%. And for me, the governance around this doesn't change at all. And even if we have complete HAZOP experts that are amazing at this, you still wouldn't take their output on their own and not have independent reviews and independent assessment. And even someone that had 50 years, well, probably not 50 years, I don't think they're that old, but someone that was so incredibly experienced at it, and you still wouldn't take all of their output on their own. So that for me, that governance piece does not change at all. But a lot of the pre-work that you have going into these workshops, that where you have ideally for me, I think you're best off to go in with a lot of pre-work into the workshops. And a quote that I use quite often, it's what the quickest way to get an answer on the internet or on social media is to not ask a question, but it's to say something incorrectly, because someone will jump in and say, "Oh, I disagree with that. That's wrong." It would be much quicker. If you want to know, say what time the bus is, you're much better to say the bus leaves at this time, and then someone goes, "No, actually, it's this time," rather than ask the question. So having that pre-work there, and even if that pre-work is not perfect and it has mistakes in there, is a better place to start from. And then you can have people looking into that and reviewing that, and so the workshop process and that human in the loop does not change at all. But you've sped up a lot of the mandrolic process, that turning the handle of creating that work, of applying all the different guide words in the HAZOP example, can be reduced. The amount of time and effort can be reduced on it hugely, I believe.
Okay, sounds great. That just reinforces what I believe in terms of the role of AI, the role of human expertise. So one thing that I'm curious to know is about the LLM used for these experiments. So what was the LLM of choice, or the LLMs of choice? And also, I think that to get the best results, as you did, you need to know to use prompt engineering really well. Because if you just ask the wrong questions, or if you input the wrong, or let's say not sufficient information, you're not going to get the results that you're expecting, right? So tell about those two things, the LLM and also the importance of prompt engineering in getting results.
Okay, so to start with, so a bit of context as well. We had actually developed our own generative AI tool at BMT, which we call BMT Copilot. Initially, the reason for developing this tool was that we needed something that satisfies our security requirements, because we do a lot of work in the defense domain. There are strict data sovereignty rules around the information that we put in, and so we had to guarantee that our data would not leave the country, so it had to stay within the UK. So we developed the BMT Copilot, which gave us a good sort of 12 months head start on being able to use things and play around with different things on it. This has actually since been discontinued. We've had to mothball it because now Microsoft have updated their security requirements and we're able to keep all the data within the UK using Microsoft Copilot. We initially tried to do the study using the BMT tool, but it became too cumbersome, and the way it was originally built was actually made it really nice from a prompt multi-step prompting point of view, because it had multiple different steps and you could build these templates. So you could have that initiation step and then ask it to review the documents, to break down into to identify all the different system components. But the problem we had is that you couldn't then go and edit it between each step. So if there was a mistake in the first step, it would just carry all the way through. And so we then ended up having to move to Microsoft Copilot, and because you're able to oh, actually no, that's incorrect, this is the bit, and then before you move on to the next one. So in hindsight now, we managed to strip out a lot of the security information, as we had to do when we wrote the paper. We had to remove all of that. So we probably could have ended up trying different language models, which is a bit of a shame, because I would have loved to have tried some of the newer ones. But ChatGPT 5.0 had just landed, so we were really excited to try that reasoning model. But then it nicely, the whole purpose I went into it was looking at the prompt engineering side of things and what were those different techniques that we could use, and we used a range of advanced prompting techniques.
Okay.
So initially it was trying to use the chain of thought prompting was one of the key parts, but that is inherently built into ChatGPT 5.0, so it actually is obsolete now. We also use what's called an atom of thought, which is where you ask it to break it down into each individual component and solve that component on its own, which sits really nicely with the HAZOP type study, because you imagine each of those components and each of the attributes to that component, and then apply it, and then it thinks it through on its own individually, rather than doing one, then moving on to the next one, then moving on to the next one, and then it gets rid of the problem of drift that you have. So that was a really powerful prompting technique that we used. But the standout star of the show from the different prompting techniques we used was called an error-resistant prompting technique,
okay,
which was by far the best performing bit. And it was so what you did was you asked the LLM to give you a confidence score in the quality of the output. So we'd review its output and say whether it had high, medium, or low confidence score. But within that, it would think of different things such as, have you had to use any assumptions, or have you taken this directly from this source material? And so there were various different aspects that it did on that, and then it used, which also then made it much easier to review at the end when you were going through and you're going, oh, look, it made an assumption here. Oh, and it's made a mistake in that assumption, but I understood what that assumption was. So you had a confidence score, which was really, really helpful and really powerful. But then it also traced itself back in, and part of that prompting techniques is it goes back through and recursively looks back at what it had done in the past as well. So yeah, from a prompting point of view, it was a really, really powerful technique, and was definitely the most interesting of the techniques that we use. One of my another colleague from a different company, she also did a very similar study, and she actually found that the biggest challenge was in the context and getting the LLM to understand the system, and that a lot of those prompting techniques become less important when it has a better understanding of the system. So it comes back to that very first problem of, feeding in the system design document and saying, extract what are the different components and what are the different attributes from it. But if you've done a lot of that work already, those prompting techniques are less essential. However, I will say error-resistant prompting is something for anything that is doing any sort of logical problem in this space. It's a really powerful one to use, because it's really you can really just trace the LLM's thinking all the way through and see where it has made any assumptions and made any mistakes. And I can share the paper with everyone as well, which has all of the prompts that we used in it. So, and I think that's very important to share and not gatekeep the knowledge. We spoke about this before, haven't we, Lucas?
Yes.
The key points of this podcast is you want to share the knowledge of how that's
Yeah,
done. And so
So if you share with me the paper, Ben, I will make sure to email everyone who registered for the podcast, so they have access to your prompt, techniques. So of course, that such prompted techniques that you use for this specific scenario is something very sophisticated, right? But for the audience who's watching or listening to us today, wants to get started with AI, for example, using ChatGPT or Claude or any other large language model, how would you recommend them to prompt? So, is there any particular framework or format that you use for much simpler examples?
Yeah, so we have developed the prompt framework that we use at BMT is called CRAFT. So it is stands for context, the role, action, format, tone, and template. And for most general tasks that you're asking AI to do, it's a really useful format, really useful framework to do. You don't have to use all of it. But I've developed a training course that we run at BMT, and I've also run it externally on this technique. And it's really useful for just so many things to think about. These are the type of useful information to include when writing it. So going through that see that context, that's where I spend most of the time when I'm writing my prompts, is what is the context that you need to know?
Yeah.
Who's the audience that you're working towards? What is the background information? In terms of the example, is that what's the system design that we're looking at? So trying to give as much context as possible. The next one, our role. So that is the persona. Can you give the AI, the LLM, a persona? So maybe it is a business analyst, maybe they are a marketing specialist, or maybe they are a functional safety engineer with 20 years of working in the UK defence. That's myself, if nobody else got the joke there. The next one, ask, or what is the task? If you don't ask it to do anything, you might as well not put the rest of the stuff in. You're just feeding information into a chatbot. So the ask, the task, is the most important thing. But you're also trying to ask it in a simple, concise way as well. A lot of people can be quite verbose and over explain things. So trying to keep it as simple and as direct as possible. And I actually think it's made me a better manager doing this, because I've become so much more precise in the way that I delegate tasks. If you ask the LLM to do something and it comes back with the wrong thing, the first reaction is, oh my God, this AI is so stupid. But then you go, oh, actually, was it stupid? Or did I just ask it to do something really badly? So often it comes back to that. The next part, F, so that's the format. So what is the format that you want it to be output in? Do you want a table? Are you writing an email? Are you writing an article? The next one, tone. This is the least important part of the prompt framework. It's probably not clear. You don't always have to include every part of the prompt framework when writing a prompt, but tone is, and this is more, if you're writing an email, maybe you want it to be more friendly or more professional. But often we use the prompt, use simple technical English that's accessible to both a technical and non-technical audience, because a lot of the stuff that we write has to be read by non-technical people as well. So, and then the very last bit is the template. So that's can you give the LLM an example of what good looks like? We use this a lot in the HAZOP study that we did, because we fed in, this is past examples of what good output is, and even better than giving one example, you can give two or more. So that's called multi-shot prompting. So that template is a really powerful way. And then for anybody who wants to learn more about it, I would say YouTube is the best place to go down if they don't want to contact myself or you, because that's been such an incredible resource for helping to learn this. There's so much out
there. I agree. So let's just recap. So C for role, so C for crafts, R for role, A for ask, F for formats, T for tone, and also for templates. And I'm sure that what you mean by templates is you're human in the loop. You supply AI with something that you can use. So, for example, what additional information AI needs to execute that prompt? So, what additional things that AI doesn't know, that is not yet part of it? It's like a data set that would help AI to give you a, let's say, better outcome in terms of what you're looking for, right?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Amazing. So I love your prompt acronym. I have one which is much simpler. It's RCTF, role, context, form, and task. It works really well as well.
I'd say they're the four most important parts of the craft format.
Yeah. So you mentioned about the risks, right? So you said about drifts, hallucinations. So what are the most common risks that you have encountered when performing such safety critical engineering studies, or in some cases also something, let's say, not so complex?
So I think there's definitely a perception thing around this, and there is, and I will find, because I've done quite a lot of workshops and done a lot of things where I'm talking to a lot of people about this, and there seems to be the two extreme opinions around the adoption of AI, and I do agree with both of them, but I also disagree with both of them. That is, AI is so amazing it's going to come and steal all our jobs, or it makes loads of mistakes. It's terrible. We can't use it. And I think they're both, and I've heard the same people have both of those opposite opinions as well, which the irony wasn't lost on me. And I don't. Whilst I do agree that both of them have there are legitimate concerns, I don't think they're particularly helpful as well. And I think the first one of it's so amazing, it's so incredibly right, is one of the hardest ones to, once people start using it, go, well, the AI said that, and they're not understanding the limitations of it. And once you get your head around the fact that it's really good and really useful, but it can still make mistakes, and you're comfortable in that space, that's when you become a real powerful user, because then you start to push back. You go, you get an output, and you go, okay, that bit's all really good, but you got this bit completely wrong, and you push back on that output, and it's when expertise plus AI is probably the most powerful combination, because when you have someone really junior coming in, they don't know what good looks like, so they don't know when to push back. So they'll just go, "Oh right, I've got this output that looks good because I don't have any reference to it." But for someone that's an expert, that's been doing a lot of these types of studies or been doing a lot of work in whatever your area of expertise is, when something looks good and when something doesn't, and so you can quickly push back, and that combination, I think, is the most powerful when we can really do something a lot more. But there definitely is a perception within the world of safety, and I think rightly so as well, of a concern and an apprehension around using AI. And I can see some of the names that are in the list, and we've discussed it before, where there is that concern of, all right, we're going to be handing over everything to the AI, uh, uh, and we need to, not do that. And it isn't. It's I think, that human, we mentioned the human in the loop is
Yeah.
part of it, but it's also a little bit deeper than that as well, of having that to and fro, and taking your ideas in there and making it better than what you could have done on your own, but knowing when to push back and not do it. So the more people use these tools, the more comfortable they are with them, and they then understand the limitations, and that's when I think it becomes really powerful.
I totally agree. So I've been speaking with EHS leaders a lot about the potential use of AI, and I found two different scenarios that I'd like to tell you about. So some people say that AI is making them lazy because they pretty much, rely
Yeah.
on AI a lot for pretty much everything, and that's a huge mistake because over reliance on AI models is a risk. So we need to find a balance. And for other EHS leaders that I also talk to, they say, well, AI has made me, much more stronger in terms of like having more time to spend on the, on the ground floor with like frontline workers, coaching them, guiding them. So there are the two sides of this situation that we are all in. And the worst thing you can do right now is to neglect both things. So you need to
Yeah.
really understand, those two things and find a balance. Get yourself using AI responsibly is the best thing I can tell you. The worst thing you can do is to avoid, because there's no way out of the situation. The genie won't go back to the bottle anymore. So AI is here to stay 100%. You mentioned about the risks, hallucination. You mentioned I just said over reliance. There are other
Mm.
risks, and you said that it's important to have human in the loop in order to mitigate those risks. But what happens when when the human in the loop is not prepared to mitigate those risks? So that's another problem that I see, because if we now start talking about the competencies, we will find that our profession is not, well equipped with the skills necessary to lead this change, right? And we
Yeah.
find our offline discussions about competencies and tooling and things like that. I would like to know your opinion then about the current state of our profession in terms of preparedness for leading and thriving in the digital age with AI. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, thanks. So what been looking into this a lot, and I'll go back to the biggest challenge that we had in our study, which was getting the LLM to understand the system, and looking around a lot of the tools that are out there that we use, especially within engineering and specifically within sort of safety engineering. They're all quite old now. They're 20 to 30 years old, and then they're good tools, but they look old, they look dated, and a lot of the time they
For
look.
before you continue, you just something just came to my head here. You mentioned about the tooling, being old, but we still use the tools today. Um, the problem I see today is that the our diplomas, our certifications, it still reflects the syllabuses of 20, 30 years ago,
Mhm.
and it's all about compliance, audit, investigation, risk management, which they are extremely important because this is the core of our profession. But we cannot just accept that in the industry 4.0 age, we are still not considering upgrading our toolkit. So you mentioned about the tooling being old, and I think that the training that we got access to when we started in this profession doesn't reflect the modern days that we're living in, right? Would you agree with that as well?
Oh yeah, definitely, and that, as I said, that it looks old, and I think one of the most interesting one, model-based systems engineering, which I think is a really useful tool, and especially for some of the stuff you're doing, you build a model of the system, and MBSE is really good for humans to read. But AI struggles with it because the output is in a format the AI can't struggle with, can't read and understand and reason over. I think SysML version 2 is supposed to be getting better at it, but from what I've seen, it doesn't seem to be doing a good job. And I've been looking into knowledge graphs a lot, and I think knowledge graphs are a really interesting tool, and they are much more accurate. They are traceable, they're explainable, and so when you take knowledge graphs and you combine them with AI, they then become really powerful. And that's for anybody that's not aware, knowledge graphs sit under all the major applications that we all use every day. So they sit under Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. They're in Amazon, and they're in your online banking. They're in everything, and they are really powerful. They're not new technology. So I really think that being able to do that link between the two does start to move things forward a lot. But even hazard logs, you look at them, so much people still use Excel as so often as the tool that they go to build a hazard log in it. And which is, it's fine, it's easy, it's flexible, it's quick, but it's not doing anything smart. And those links between the cause to the hazard to the accident, and the controls and the mitigations are very manual links. And I think being able to create that accurate picture and have all of those relationships linked together, then we can actually start to do some much clever, smarter things with AI. And I'm trying to get things going in this area, but I think so much of the tools are so old, we need to kind of almost tear it up and start again.
I agree. And nowadays, one of the things that I see very regularly is legacy EHS software companies wrapping generative AI LLMs and saying that they have done something amazing and charging premium, when in fact it's pretty much the same technology with just like an AI chatbot. And if you don't understand the technology itself, how can you make the right call whether you should pay premium or not? So, and again, another reason why, in my view, EHS leaders needs to upskill, not to learn about AI exclusively, but also about technology in general. I think that it's part of the case of EHS, leaders, because the things that we know really well, they are now becoming somehow a commodity. It's the minimum expectation if you want to be in this profession, right? So what's going to set you apart in the digital age is your ability to leverage everything that you know and multiply your capacity. This is a conversation for another episode, for another podcast, because we can stay here for hours just talking about that. So you mentioned about the competencies, right? So what skills do you think EHS leaders needs to develop in order to understand more about the new tooling and thrive when using such tools day to day?
So I think actually I spent a lot of the last couple of years have been trying to learn more about data science, because I was trying to I'm going down the AI route, and I was learning loads of stuff about it, but then actually realizing that so much of it is just good data science. And even take for example, I mentioned the hazard logs. A lot of that, just having good data science in there, then enables to be really useful. Then the AI just becomes that sort of cherry on the top, rather than it being the core bit. And everyone seems to be trying to put AI first, rather than trying to actually sort the data and get that good quality data. And being able to get that larger risk picture is not really that complicated maths, even though it might sometimes feel like it when you're sat in those workshops. But to get that more accurate picture, so I think there's some really basic data science that we can do to do a massive improvement. And then once that data is already organized and it's structured, it's connected, you can get that much clearer picture. I've been looking at thinking how you connect your component to your system, to your platform level hazard logs, because we do a lot of that within my sort of area. And at the moment, those hazard logs are not well connected. On paper, on theory, they're connected, but in practice, it's very much human in the loop. Okay, we can't manage this system level hazard log, this system level hazard in the system. We're going to have to pass it over to the platform. So I'm going to call the people up on the platform and ask them, can you accept this? And then maybe it gets passed over, and maybe they've accepted it, and nobody really knows because that link isn't well understood. But then I've made a change, and that information isn't automatically transferred through, and so to link it all together it doesn't feel like that complicated a thing to do. But at the moment, I can't really find any products that are doing this, and so I think and that's not very complicated data science. That's just quite basic. So I think for a lot of people, it's just learning the basics of how we can do that.
People, I think that when you say data science and the kind of stuff, we tend to say, well, this thing is so crazy. How can I get to know about and learn data science? I'm a safety professional, but we are safety professionals that we make decisions based on data, right? So it's about understanding the role of data, the difference between structured and unstructured data, and how you can connect the dots, how you can create better workflows using such data, or the other way around as well. So in terms of what the future, look like for you, Ben, do you think that when it comes to risk management, not talking specifically on HAZOPs right now, I mean basic risk management, let's say JSAs, RAMs, that kind of stuff. Do you think that the future is more about AI assisting us, or do you think that at some point AI will reach a level where we will be able to trust and delegate completely to AI models? What's your take on that?
Interesting one. At the moment, I do not see it getting to an accuracy level where we can fully hand it over. But I do see it being able to do a lot of the heavy lifting. I think, LLMs are inherently, they're probability machines. They are they're biased to just creating content, and that content can still be useful, but they aren't biased towards accuracy. In fact, they don't really care about being accurate. They just care about trying to sound plausible. So unless there's a fundamental shift in the architecture of what the language models go down, I can't see it fully handing over. But what I do see is that we can get to a position where the cost of doing a HAZOP, the cost of doing an FHA, a cost of doing an STPA or a FRAM, or all these other different risk assessment techniques that exist within the world, the cost of doing one of those is reduced massively. So you can do a lot more combinations of assessments, which gives you a much clearer picture. And then hopefully we then have the tooling that can then handle any changes much in the design or new information arising, being able to that being a much more accurate live picture. For example, as I mentioned, going back to the hazard logs again, they're supposed to be live documents, but the reality is they're updated once, put in a box. They're supposed to be updated a year later, but everybody's too busy and we can't do it now, so we end up doing it 3 years later, and then there's all these incidences happened. Let's actually make them live and keep them up to date and reduce a lot of the manual work that's involved in that. But personally, I don't see it going away, and I know our tech overlords, ChatGPT and Microsoft and all the other companies are not pushing that narrative. But I'm yet to be convinced that it's going to be happening the way that they're selling their products.
Yeah, and I asked that question on purpose because I've seen a lot of hype on LinkedIn recently. Claims. So I wanted to ask your opinion on that, because I agree with you. I think that our expertise doesn't go away. I think that we need to develop the right combination of tech soft and power skills, and that includes learning about the technology and knowing where you should use, because it's not about whether you can use it, it's knowing where
Yeah.
it should be used or it should not be used. So talking about that, just like to take 1 minute of your time and introduce you something really, really exciting in case you are considering upskilling in safety tech, AI, and digital transformation.
In the digital age, safety leadership without digital skills has become a liability. The problem? Traditional safety training never prepared you for this shift. Today, AI and tech skills in EHS are alarmingly low. 25% of professionals have no digital experience at all, and 61% say they're just beginners. But the world of safety is changing fast. Industry 4.0, AI, data analytics, and automation are already redefining how we prevent incidents, measure performance, and protect people. And every day you wait to upskill, the gap widens, and the risk of falling behind grows. The solution? You need new skills. You need to become the Safety 4.0 leader. Introducing the Safety 4.0 Academy, a comprehensive transformation program that covers everything you need to become a Safety 4.0 leader in times of rapid technological change. The world's first IOSH-approved and CPD-certified training designed to transform your career from rule keeper to change maker. A modern Safety 4.0 curriculum, expert-led masterclasses, and practical resources to help you learn in hours, not months. Trusted by safety leaders worldwide. Upskill now. And don't just keep up with change. Lead it.
All right, so that's the Safety 4.0 Academy, and the Safety 4.0 Accelerator is now open for applications. There is one ongoing cohort right now, which has been amazing, and I'm loving working with those guys. And in case you're considering to upscale this year, that's the best, suggestion I can give you, right? Ben, let's see if we have questions for you. Let's see right now. I have one from Caroline, and Caroline says, talking about human in the loop, can you confirm you said that the HAZOP workshop will still be undertaken using the initial output generated by the AI tool?
Yeah, so I think for me that governance doesn't change at all. It is still we are taking we're going in with more information pre-prepared, and I do think it helps sort of speed up a lot of that assessment work that's being done, and we still need those experts in the room to run through it. So for me, nothing changes in that regard at all. But we're able to potentially do a lot more of the assessment in less of the time. One observation we did have from it, and you asked about the different language models.
Yeah.
ChatGPT seems to like to just create content, and it could say something in 10 words that it could say in 2 or 3 words. It will go for 10 words. So there may be another problem where we have information overload. We have too much content going in, and then comes so much to review. And I know. A lot of programmers are finding now that there's so much code to review that they're struggling to keep up with it.
Well, that's really good. So any final questions to Ben? And Ben, before we go, I just would like to say, first of all, thanks a lot for your time. I know you were very busy, and I think that it was a great conversation. I hope you can repeat this conversation at some point. So if you share your materials with me, I will email everyone here in this call so they can get to know more about your craft prompt framework. So Ben, what are your final considerations? What's your recommendations for EHS leaders who want to understand more about technology? So where should they start?
I think so I developed a prompt engineering training course because one of the things I found was I kept talking to people and saying, look, there's all this new technology, all these things that we could try. And I kept speaking over and over and over. And then I speak to them in person and go, oh, have you given it a go? And they go, oh, no, not yet. And one of the hardest things was to get people to just open up ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, whatever it is, and just type something in. In fact, I started my prompt training course just saying, ask it to write a joke. And then write a joke, hit enter, then it come out. None of the jokes were funny, but that wasn't the point. The point was that they type something in, they hit enter and go, well, that was actually quite easy. That wasn't that scary. And so I think it's just play with it. And the more you play with it, the better you get. And then once you've started doing some basic stuff, then you can start to look at introducing some more advanced prompting techniques. But I think the most important thing, just give it a go. And actually, yeah, then you'll find that it can be really useful and really helpful.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Ben, if people want to connect with you or, get in touch, how can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I guess LinkedIn's probably the best one. I'm trying to be quite active on there. I'm trying to do lots of thought leadership and sharing my ideas. So yeah, LinkedIn's probably the best tool for that.
Okay, fantastic. So again, thanks you all for your time. So if you're not yet, subscribed to the Safety 4.0 Live podcast, please do so. It's on YouTube. We also share our episodes on Spotify. I really enjoyed, Ben, and thanks you all for your time. And I see you very soon. In 2 weeks, one more episode is being released about cybersecurity. Okay, let's talk about cybersecurity because it's another hot topic for EHS professionals to learn when thinking and considering about, deploying AI tools. All right, so stay safe and let's take safety forward. Thank you very much. Thanks, Ben. My pleasure. Bye-bye. Take care.
Yes.